Okay, everyone, welcome back to Higher Learning Test Prep's online video tutorial series. Today we have another student request here from Amy, who was asking us about this question. She thought this looked like a tricky question, and we agreed. It says, what was the initial number of students enrolled in a high school that now has B students, which lost C students, and then gained 100 students? That sounds confusing. If that doesn't make your head spin, then maybe you should be a sailor because I'm getting dizzy. I feel a little bit sick looking at this question. Anyways, so uh, let's take a look at how we're going to do this thing. First of all, let's notice the nature of this problem. They're asking us to work backwards to figure out the initial amount when we now know that the final amount is B. So we have to do things a little bit differently. B students, they now have B students, and they lost C. Okay, well, let's make these real numbers. Let's say now has instead, let's say 500 kids at the school, and that's equal to B, because that's what B represents in the problem. Now, lost C, they lost, let's say, we're using 100 already, so let's call the lost amount 200, and that equals C. So now let's really think about what this question is saying. They want to know how much the initial number was. Well, the initial amount equals what? Well, I don't know exactly what it equals, which is what these answers are looking for, but I can say that if you had the initial amount and then you lost 200 and then gained 100, you would then have your new amount, which is what they now have, 500. Okay, so another way of let's simplify this, minus 200 and plus 100 is the same thing as just minus 100. So initial, I'll just write it as IN this time, initial minus 100 equals 500. Of course, we can all do this now. The initial amount in our school was 600. Sweet, so you initially had 600, you lost 200, you'd be down to 400, you gained 100, now you're up to 500. That all makes sense. And I recommend just checking that in a really common sense way afterwards. Now, we're looking for 600. That's what they're looking for. What was the initial number of students when B equals 500 and C equals 200? Okay, well, certainly not 500 plus 200 plus 100. That's not going to be right. B plus C would be 500 plus 200, which is 700, minus 100 is 600. So this is right. This is the right answer. And on the test, we hope that you'll be confident enough to know that you're done, but let's just look at the other answers. 500 minus 200 is down to 300, plus 100 is 400. That's not going to work. 500 minus 200 minus 100 is even smaller, so both of these are wrong. And then B times C is going to be, what, 10,000? So that's definitely too much. 10,000 plus 100. So the best answer is B. And what we learned here is two things. First of all, what's tricky about this question is that they're asking us to work backwards and that they're using variables and real numbers, which is a little bit confusing in a word problem. The best thing to do is to use real numbers, but not simply to use real numbers, but to be clear about what they represent. The school now has B, which is 500. They lost C. And then instead of writing a regular math problem, I just wrote the word initial, and then what happened? That equals 500. So the best way to do this is a common sense approach using real numbers instead of variables and taking your time to really understand what the question is saying. Let us know if you have any more questions. We're happy to help. If you need any help at all with the SAT, you know who to reach out to. Thanks, and bye for now.